Welcome to Your Family's Health, the program that focuses on healthcare issues with unique and different modalities for taking charge of your health today. Experts talk weekly with our continuing roster of guests from around the country and right here in Nassau County to keep you up to date on the latest health issues and trends. Take care of your mind, body, and soul. Spend the next half hour with the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC, and get on the journey to better health.
Hello and welcome to Your Family's Health. My name is Dr. Jeanine Cook-Garard from the nursing department here at Nassau Community College, along with Nassau Community College student Gina Peter. And today we're going to learn all about Huntington's disease, a fatal genetic disorder that causes the progressive breakdown of nerve cells in the brain.
Our guest today is Gia Mannone, the Huntington's Disease Society of America's National Youth Alliance Youth Services and Recruitment Chair, to help us better understand this disease and how her organization is working to help patients and their families who suffer from it.
Gia, welcome to Your Family's Health on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. Welcome. Glad to have you.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here.
First of all, I hope you're doing okay in light of this COVID pandemic. Has the virus affected you personally?
I actually graduated in the middle of this pandemic.
Wow.
Yeah, graduate school nonetheless. So it has been a little bit of a challenge, but other than that, luckily, everyone I know, loved ones, have all been fine and safe.
So can you tell us more about Huntington disease and how common it is?
So to start, HD is a brain disease, and it is passed down in families from generation to generation. HD causes deterioration in one's physical, mental, and emotional abilities. And today there are 41,000 symptomatic Americans, but still 200,000 at risk of inheriting.
So is this disease something that is genetic, something you can catch? Tell us about the disease.
Yeah, so that is a common misconception that you can catch Huntington's disease. You cannot. It is not contagious, and it is only hereditary and genetic. So every offspring of a positive HD parent has a 50-50 chance of inheritance.
When did you first learn about Huntington's disease? Has it affected you or your family personally?
I grew up what I would consider to be a typical family, but it wasn't until my mom started displaying symptoms around her 30s, which would make me about, I believe, 10 at the time. And my parents decided to tell us about the disease very early on. As soon as the symptoms were showing, they wanted to be open and honest with my sister and I. Of course, my sister was a little baby at the time, so I was the first one who was told. There were no secrets. I was told about the inheritance and how I did have that 50-50 chance right away, so that I wasn't confused or left in the dark about anything. So I have known majority of my life, actually. But also my grandfather had HD as well. Both my mom and my grandfather are passed at this time. But my grandfather and my mom had extremely different cases of HD.
So when we talk about the Huntington gene, who's most prevalent? Is it race? Tell me who with the predisposition in terms of individuals who may have the disease.
So unfortunately, Huntington's disease does not discriminate. Your age, gender, race, it does not matter. So we have adult onset Huntington's disease, and we also have juvenile Huntington's disease. So unfortunately, someone as young as 2 years old can inherit this, and someone as old as 90 could also be displaying symptoms. And that's truly what is the worst part about this disease, is that it could come in at any time. Your symptoms could start showing at 15. They could show at 25, 35, 95. There's no way to really pinpoint that either.
What would be some of the symptoms of someone who might be suffering from Huntington's disease? And also, when you talk about juvenile, are there any specific symptoms displayed when you're that young that could point to Huntington's disease?
So I'll start with the juvenile version. I do not have anyone in my family that has juvenile Huntington's disease, but as far as I know, seizures are pretty prevalent with juvenile Huntington's disease. But also speaking with doctors and, kind of going with what a child this age should be doing and their behaviors, their mannerisms are clear indications. I know a lot of families who have said they just felt like their communication might have been off or, just something that led them to go to their doctor and, have tests run and just see what this could be. Is it just timeline and maybe they need more time, or is there something bigger going on? But of course, if there is family history, that they will take a look at HD a little bit sooner. But for adult onset, you're looking at cognitive symptoms such as, impaired memory. We tend to see some mental health issues or mental illness along with Huntington's disease. One of the bigger symptoms is chorea, which is the involuntary movements. And that happens or can happen all day long. So many individuals with Huntington's disease lose weight at a rapid pace and are often underweight. I would say that was a huge one for my mom, at least. She lost weight very quickly. I love to tell people we would make shakes for my mom and put whole pieces of cake in them just to try and get the calorie count up. Like that's how fast they lose weight just from those involuntary movements. But then there's also behavior changes, mood swings, aggression, inability to swallow, needing assistance with bathing, hygiene care. And at the end of their lives for HD, usually you'll need 24/7 care.
So this inherited condition that you're talking about, I know you said that your mother had it. Could you trace it back to your grandparents?
The only knowledge I have in my family is my mom inherited from my grandfather,
okay,
and my grandfather inherited from his father. And my grandfather's siblings, he had 4, including himself. So he had 3 siblings. We only know that one of them was positive. The other 2 had passed before we were able to know if they inherited the gene or not.
This Huntington's disease, it typically starts in your 30s or 40s. What is a test that can be done if you suspect that you're having some changes, I guess, in your motor ability, your ability to move, or some symptoms? And that brings me to, how did you know the onset, that you were starting to display symptoms of Huntington's? So 2 questions. How do you diagnose it? And what, how do you know that you have it? What were some of the early symptoms?
To begin, you can start getting genetic testing for Huntington's disease at age 18. Okay. Of course, if juvenile Huntington's disease is suspected, I believe it could be done earlier. Also, family history diagnosis is actually how my mom found out she was positive. She did not have her blood drawn to figure out that she was positive due to the fact that she was already displaying symptoms. When you go in for this testing, they will do cognitive tests as well as a blood draw. And for my mom in that instance, she had failed those cognitive tests, which led doctors to the positive diagnosis. And I think it's also important to mention that my mom did get her diagnosis from an HDSA Center of Excellence. So my family obviously lived in New York at the time. So my mom went through the tests at Columbia University, which is a known HDSA Center of Excellence. So that's really great. They work with you so well there and do all of the official tests just to, make sure. And for myself, I am actually still at risk at this time. But as far as seeing the symptoms in my mom, again, I was very young when her symptoms appeared, but it was very obvious to other parents, children that were in my classes. When you're in elementary school, you go to the field day and chorus concerts, and I would have children come up to me and ask, hey, what's wrong with your mom? And that's a 10-year-old asking another 10-year-old because they're already realizing that something's a little bit off.
So you talking about the other kids asking about your family. Can you talk about how else Huntington's disease has affected your family from the outside looking in?
I would say, for me at least, of course, my sister has a different experience. But for me at least, school was very tough. When you're 10 and you're being asked, like, why does your mom walk different? Why is her speech slurred? It's really difficult because your mom is your mom no matter what, and you view them as normal because you don't know or live with anything else. But once I did start seeing, the mood changes and, hey, mom's not in the same, mood as she was maybe even a year ago, I started to do my research more. And that's how I kind of was able to cope with knowing all this information so early on. But school was always really tough, all the way up through college. Honestly, my mom passed away in my final semester of undergraduate. And, the school was like, take off, don't come back until you're ready. And I knew I had to finish. I had to push through. I was determined to graduate and get into graduate school. So I continued going to school. I took 1 week off and kept going. But I would say the financial burden, although I didn't have to pay for things, my dad had to become a stay-at-home dad, basically, because we could not afford the care. And although keeping a job would have been the best, my dad also had to go out on disability. He fell off the truck at his job. So now I had two disabled parents, really. And that caused a huge financial burden. The care, everything from making your house safe, a lot of individuals with HD don't realize how strong they are. So my mom would sometimes, when closing the toilet seat, wind up ripping the toilet seat actually off. And we would have to replace that, replacing dishwashers, dryers, everything, because she somehow had this superpower of strength and just didn't know it. So financial burden was a big one, but luckily for myself, socially, I was very open about it. So I wouldn't say that was a struggle for me, but definitely the biggest one would be financial and how others viewed my mom. Oftentimes she would be seen as incapable by others. Again, this is when I was very young. We would have parents who would see my mom taking my sister and I to the park and actually wind up calling the police because they thought she was drunk because of the slurred speech and because of her gait and not having good balance or stability walking.
You're listening to Your Family's Health on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. My name is Dr. Jeanine Cook-Garard, along with Nassau Community College student Gina Peter. And today we're learning about Huntington's disease, a fatal genetic disorder that causes the progressive breakdown of nerve cells in the brain. With our guest, Gia Mannone, the Huntington's Disease Society of America's National Youth Alliance Youth Services and Recruitment Chair. So I'm sorry to hear about your mom, Gia.
Yeah.
You talk about moving to Florida because of a better care for your mom. What's the difference in care from Florida to New York? What were the differences you saw?
I actually stayed in New York while my dad, sister, and mom moved to Florida. But they really decided to move down there. And it seems silly, but for the weather. And the main reason that this is great for Huntington's disease, and really anyone with a disability, is the simplicity of, clothing. In New York, you're going to have to change into maybe snow pants, sweatshirts, sweaters, heavier coats, socks, everything. Even your footwear will matter in New York. But down in Florida, it's a little bit easier to just have my mom hang out in shorts and a t-shirt all day. And then the only outfit change we would have to do is for pajamas at night. And even at that point, because there can be irritation with change and even changing clothes. So if my mom wanted to wear the same thing the next day, as long as she got a shower, if that's what she wants, we could keep her in the same clothes, So that was one thing that was really helpful, just the weather. Also, the weather has a really huge impact on mood. So oftentimes my mom was smiling 24/7 down in Florida. She honestly loved thunderstorms. So she would watch out the window, the thunder and the lightning, and that made her really happy as well. The only negative difference, I would say, was that when my mom and family went down to Florida, we did wind up having to get my mom on hospice care. And we had this image of what we thought hospice care would be, and it was not that. Of course, it will differ depending on the agency that you use and, insurance and stuff. But in the beginning, my mom was only receiving 30 minutes of care by hospice each day, not including weekends. So as you can imagine, it was still a lot of work for my dad and my sister. So we do wish that we maybe had done a little bit more research on hospice care in Florida. Not saying that it would have been any different had we stayed in New York. But that was the only thing that was a little tough going down to Florida. But overall, the move, it did wind up saving us financially a little bit as well because of cost of living. But overall, I would say the move was probably our best choice.
How fast does Huntington's disease progress, and what are some of the treatment options available to patients?
With adult onset, they say after diagnosis, which means once you're already displaying symptoms, your lifespan is typically, I believe, 15 to 20 years after showing symptoms. For juvenile Huntington's disease, this could be much less, unfortunately. And then as for treatment, there is unfortunately no cure for Huntington's disease right now, but researchers, doctors, scientists are working so hard to get this for us, and we're very hopeful. HD Buzz is a great resource to get the latest updates on trials and medications that we're hoping will come out in the near future. But as for treatment, you could really only take medications that will treat the symptoms of Huntington's disease.
Tell us about the Huntington's Disease Society of America. How many centers are there in the United States, and where on Long Island are they located?
So there are currently 54 HDSA centers of excellence, and these cover 35 states and DC. Long Island actually now has our very own center of excellence. I'm super excited about it too, at Stony Brook University Hospital.
Do you think enough people in Long Island know about Huntington's disease?
I would say I started my involvement with Long Island Team Hope Walks in 2012. And I believe the first Long Island Team Hope Walk was the year prior, 2011. And we started out so small, such a small little group of people excited to spread awareness for Huntington's disease. And since 2012, I've attended every single one, and we have grown so much. But I do think there is still a need to get more information out to Long Islanders, especially youth. Every year at the Long Island Team Hope Walk, I set up a booth for the National Youth Alliance in hopes that Long Island youth will find me and want to get connected to others in the United States and be able to have the same resources that I have.
Can you tell us what the Huntington's Disease Parity Act is, and how important is the Huntington's Disease Parity Act to the community?
Without passage of the HD Parity Act, patients with Huntington's disease will continue to suffer the mandated 2-year waiting period for Medicare benefits after qualifying for Social Security disability insurance. So this is extremely important to get past. For myself, I really would love this to get passed for, when I do decide to test. And if that result is a positive gene status, this would be great to have passed because it will definitely ease some anxiety and some stress. I know for a lot of other youth and families how important this is for them right now. So for me, I could wait a little bit because I'm still untested. But for those I know who are fighting right now for their parents, grandparents, for themselves, this is super important to get past.
So someone with Huntington's disease or someone with a family member with Huntington's disease, is there like a way that they can reach out for support or like information within the HDSA?
Yeah, definitely. Our youth organization, the National Youth Alliance, all you have to do is go to hdsa.org/NYA or even Google NYA, and we show up. We're on Facebook. We're on Instagram. We have a huge following. We virtually now, we are setting up events to get together. We also have our mini series, which is really great, where we have members of the NYA on a panel kind of, and we go and discuss topics through Zoom that, youth are going through right now, whether it be going through the testing process, speaking about having a parent who's positive, talking about grief and loss, whether that be in regards to testing negative, testing positive, losing a loved one. We really go over it all, and we're a really close-knit family. Something great that we all came up with is the NYA we call ourselves Ohana, which is family in Hawaiian. And that's exactly what we are, one big family across the United States.
So if someone from Long Island wants to get involved, how can they connect to the Huntington's Disease Society of America?
First, they could go to hdsa.org/northeast. That is our region and where they could find updates on all of our events. We're actually working on the 2021 Long Island Walk right now. Fingers crossed that this could happen in person, but if not, we're hoping for another really great virtual walk. And yeah, anybody could reach out to me. I'm actually on the Long Island committee now, and we're really hoping that sometime in the near future, Long Island can become their own affiliate or or a chapter even, and just keep growing.
How has Huntington's disease made you want to change your career? I know to be in the field of social work. How has that impacted you as a professional?
When I started college, I knew I wanted to be in a helping profession. I tried a couple things out and I landed in social work, which honestly is the best move and decision I have ever made. And it's really all thanks to my mom, my experiences with Huntington's disease, those I've met. Like I said, my mom was going to Columbia University for her testing and, that's where her HD doctors were. So we would go, me and my sister would go with her and my dad to those appointments, and we would have therapy with the social workers there. And just that relationship, although at first I was not fond of the therapy, I grew to appreciate it. And it really turned into me wanting to give back to those who have helped me. Right now, I work with individuals with Alzheimer's and dementia, but like I mentioned earlier, Huntington's disease does include memory loss and dementia. So where I work, I could also come in contact with someone who has Huntington's disease. And it really is full circle for me. This is really all I've ever wanted, was to give back to my community as well as reach others.
What is the one thing you want to leave our audience with when it comes to Huntington's disease and the Huntington's Disease Society of America?
I would just say you are never alone in this journey. There is someone out there who is going through the same exact thing as you, and they are more than willing to listen to your story, share their story, provide you with resources, be a shoulder to lean on, to cry on, to laugh with. We're really, really a close-knit family. Even if you're not a youth, I could definitely say everyone in this community that I've met at Long Island walks, at conventions, on these virtual mini series, everyone is truly there to listen, there to help, and you will never walk alone. And for more information and to get involved, definitely check out HDSA.org. Become a member of the NYA, and you will have access to so many people across the United States. There's definitely a bunch of people in New York still trying to find my Long Islanders, but we're a great community to be a part of and to help you out.
Well, thank you for being here, Gia Mannone, the Huntington's Disease Society of America's National Youth Alliance Youth Services and Recruitment Chair. We hope you stay safe and continue to do the great work. And thank you for being our guest today.
Thank you so much. I had a great time with you guys today.
Likewise. This is Dr. Jeanine Cook-Garard from the nursing department here at Nassau Community College, along with student Gina Peter. And we want to thank you for listening to this week's edition of Your Family's Health.
We'd like to get your feedback on your family's health. Send your comments by emailing them to whpc@ncc.edu. Podcasts of today's show are available on iTunes, Android Podcasts, and Spreaker. This program was produced at the studios of Nassau Community College in cooperation with the nursing department. Join us next week for another edition of Your Family's Health on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.